Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you James Wall, Reverend Master James Wall. James and I have known each other since seventh or
Oh,
eighth grade. When did you start coming to Chi Alpha?
seventh grade, I believe.
Seventh.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Like
for a while,
91, 92, somewhere. It was 92, I think.
yeah,
1992, way back in the 1900s.
back in the 1900s. And here we are. We'll still here.
Yep.
James, tell us a little bit of your background as far as what makes you a father. What about your family?
Well, what makes me a father are the five children I have. Um, no, I've been married to my wife Alicia for 24 years now, and we have five children, ranging in age from 21 down to 13, almost 14 now. Um, so we've got two basically adult children that are college age, and then three that are still at home in school. Two high schoolers and then a junior higher. So yeah,
So you've more than lapped me. I only have two kids. You have
slacker.
five. I know. Uh, and I a lot of a lot of my content is just about my own personal experience and research I've done, but an up and coming portion is going to be how to parent adult children. And you're in that world. I'm not there yet, so I don't talk about it because I don't know anything about it. And so if anything comes up today about that, feel free to speak into that because that's something I can't speak into.
Yeah.
And I do think about the future. The intentional grandfather is it's going to be I still have hopefully maybe a decade before that comes, but there's the evolution of the podcast. Because I've
Yeah.
heard grandparenting is
Right.
great, but there's that in between
Yeah.
phase when they're not children, but they're not parents, they're adults. And so how do we parent adults? Anyway,
Yeah. That's good.
and just so everyone knows, because I'm guessing you might sprinkle some of your wisdom from your career and recent the masters you just finished. What is that education and what are you doing career wise right now?
So career wise, I am a senior pastor of a Wesleyan church in a rural northwestern Oklahoma community. I've been here 13 years, and as Aaron, as you alluded to, I've just completed the academic classwork portion of a master's in pastoral counseling. So counseling is just really heavy on my heart. I mean, whether it's parenting, just life, all, that people are seeking help and need godly uh, counsel, and so that's just been really heavy on my heart. So I pursued it, and I finished the classwork. So yeah,
Congratulations. Doing a little plug. If you need counseling, drop a comment or message and I'll get you in contact with James. He can take care of it, even if it's virtual, if you're not in that region of Oklahoma. I'm sure he'd be glad to, right?
right, yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay, today we're going to be talking about one of the laws of the intentional father, law number 2, and it's the law of the egg. Before we jump into it, though, and I never say this, but I need to say it, guys. If you're on YouTube watching this, please click the subscribe button. That helps make more of these possible, more of these happen. And if you're on the audio version, maybe the Spotify or Apple Podcasts or something, please go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. So that'll help. Okay, enough of that. The law of the egg says that the end game is children becoming successful, independent adults. Where the I it's like, what does the egg have to do? And I've actually done a podcast on this earlier, but the idea is really quick. When an egg is fertilized, the embryo is in there. It can live by absorbing oxygen through the eggshell, but as it grows, it becomes too big to absorb oxygen. It has to start breathing, but it's an egg. There's only a little pocket And you see that when you hard boiled eggs, there's a little pocket of air in there, but the chick accesses it because it's actually suffocates and it convulses and ends up pecking through that air pocket, breathes for a little bit, it grows, begins to suffocate again, convulses, and that's how it hatches out of the egg. Ironically enough, the convulsion and the struggle that it goes through is building the chick strength, and it needs that strength to survive outside of the egg. That's why in elementary school, when you if you ever did the eggs in the incubator and you had to turn them and stuff, the teacher would tell you don't help the chicks hatch out, because if you take away their opportunity to build that strength, they end up dying outside of the egg, and that's a really sad thing. So there's the illustration. The end game is children becoming successful, independent adults is like the application. And really the point is it's okay to let your children struggle, and that's actually good for them.
Mhm.
So that's the premise of the podcast. James, why don't you just jump in and let's just start talking about it.
Yeah, I mean it's that whole idea of needing to struggle to grow, we see in every aspect of life all around us. I mean, you think of a seed in the ground, and so our agricultural listeners will be able to understand that when you put a seed in the ground, it's got to struggle to push through that dirt to grow. Trees need resistance, need struggle to grow. So like uh, arborists will say that, a tree in the wind, as the wind blows that tree, it causes the roots to go deeper. And if you're watering a tree in your yard, if you just keep the hose right next to the trunk and the water is only there on the surface by the trunk, the roots won't grow out to seek out water. And so in every aspect of life, we need struggle, hardship to grow. That's where we find growth. If we're comfortable, if we feel good, if there's no opposition, we don't grow. You see it in your physical health too. If you want to build muscle, if you want to grow, you have to struggle through running, struggle through pushing weights, whether it's in squats or bench, whatever it is, whatever exercise, you have to struggle to be able to produce the growth that you want. And the same is absolutely true for us as individuals, for us as humans, and especially for kids who are, I mean, from the time they're conceived until they reach adulthood, they are probably in maybe their greatest season of growth. I mean, once you hit adulthood, I mean, you're still growing, hopefully, but there's the physical growth, there's the emotional growth, there's spiritual growth, there's social growth, there's all of that taking place in that short 18 years of time. And so that struggle is necessary for growth. And unfortunately, we live in a time where, at least in America, we want to protect our kids from difficulty. Our parents and our grandparents, especially having gone through the Great Depression, two world wars, all that hardship, they wanted to give us a better life than they had. And we're kind of passing that on sometimes to our children. And unfortunately, what we end up doing is we protect them too much, we help them too much, and don't allow them to have that struggle, that convulsion of life of,
Mhm.
I got to reach that next level, but I don't know how, and allow them to struggle a little bit so that they can learn and grow and become ultimately successful, independent adults.
Yeah, that's good. In fact, as you were talking about that, I was thinking of other ways where life can get easier, but it's actually detrimental to us. And astronauts in space, like not having gravity, you think, oh, that'd be great. You can jump really
Yeah.
high and get around easy, but they struggle when they come back to Earth because
Yeah.
the even though life got easier, their bodies got weaker, and
Yeah.
you live that way too long, it'll kill you.
Yeah.
Okay, talk about it from a counseling standpoint, because I know this principle. This is why I wouldn't be a good counselor, but there's this principle of when you're guiding someone through a crisis, or you can see a change that someone needs to make in their life, but you just can't tell them the answer. You have to guide them to discover the answer on their own. And why is that? And then how do you do that? Or maybe how do we apply that principle to our parenting?
Right. Yeah. So, like, one of the greatest, I don't know if I'd say the greatest, but a major component of healthy counseling is not advice giving. It's, like you just said, guiding somebody through. And so, as a counselor, typically a counselor will know, okay, this person is here, and I need that they need to get here, and I know the path as the counselor. They don't. But if I just tell them, well, you need to be here, they're not going to take the journey to get there. But if I ask the right questions, if I push the right issues and get them to think, you can guide them through that path. Now, why is that so important? It goes back to, again, the law of the egg, or you think of working out, and we used to lift weights all the time together, and so and a lot of men are wanting to be healthy and everything. And so if I'm wanting to build muscle, I know that I need to work out. So I know I'm here and I need to get here. But if you just tell me, well, go and do bench press, go and do squats, go and do curls, go and lift some weights. Well, yeah, I know that. But unless I engage it, unless here in my heart, I make that decision and go and do that, I'm not going to. And so that process of allowing that struggle to take place, I'm never going to gain the weight unless I push it up. And so for an individual in counseling, or our children as we're parenting them, if we are constantly doing everything for them, they're not going to grow. So you think of bench press. If we were to go to the gym together, like we did this last year when we were in Gatlinburg, and I hadn't worked out in years. And we go and, like, we're working out with all the guys, and I'm like, man, I haven't done this in a long time. There's some muscle memory, but there was a point where it's like, I need help. Now, if you were sitting there lifting it for me, even as a spotter, I'm not gonna grow. But if I'm pushing it up and I'm struggling, you can be there encouraging me and guiding me, but I've got to push it up. Now, if there comes a point, and this is, I think, important in this discussion with parents, because I think we can go to two extremes. We can either go to the extreme of we do absolutely everything for our kids, or we can go to the extreme of we don't do anything. Like, we don't even give them advice. We don't give them counsel. We're like, nope. It's like, oh, you don't know how to swim? Throw them into the pool. You'd better learn. So we can go to those two extremes, but I think we need to have a good balance of, and again, back to the weightlifting analogy, you have a spotter. And when you're lifting, you've got that spotter, so that when you get to that point where you have given it your all and you can't push it anymore, and it's going to get dangerous if you don't get this weight off of you, that's when the spotter comes in. And so I think the same thing can be true as parents, is that we allow them to struggle and have that difficulty, but when it becomes dangerous, that if somebody doesn't step in, then there's that time where we do need to step in and help them. But again, to just say, hey, you need to do this, 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 or even just do it for them, they're never going to grow. And so to helping to guide them through that process, whatever it is vital, instead of just telling them, do this.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And that reaching on bench press, we call that reaching the point of failure. I'm going to push to where my muscles actually reach failure, and that helps them grow. That's one of the greatest moments of strength building. But yeah, the spotter's not there, I'm not going to push myself that hard because that can kill you. Ooh, there's scary YouTube
Yeah.
videos of guys failing at bench, like in their house by themselves.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. So that, I think that's a great point. Failure's okay. Death is not. Don't let your kids die, whether that's emotionally, physically, spiritually, but letting them hit that struggle point, even failure is so good. So
And
good.
that's
So
going to
good.
look different whatever stage of life your child is in.
Hmm.
So when your child is an infant, to toddler age, you're definitely going to be way more protective because you have to be.
Right.
They're going to reach for that hot stove, and you're going to have to step in and grab them and tell them no. So there's going to be times like that where you've got to step in and go, you have to be the protector. But as they get older, you begin to back off a little bit. And this has been a struggle for Alicia and I, my wife, is that, as our kids have gotten into the adult age, where do we draw that line of I'm not going to step in this time? You know, I've they may have asked my advice and I've given it, but they have to make the decision. And I need to be able to allow them even to make a decision that I would not want for them or that I know is not good for them, to allow them to learn. Because again, going back to that idea of, instead of just giving advice, guiding them through the decision, sometimes they have to make that bad decision to realize, oh yeah, that wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah. Man, that's hard. The caring part of the parent, that's hard to do. And I'll just say this to anyone listening. If you struggle with this, you don't have to don't I wouldn't judge your feelings. And it's like it's okay if you don't feel like the law of the egg, like letting your kids struggle like that. It's not a pleasant feeling no matter what. As if we're both fathers of daughters,
Mhm.
and we know it's like we can protect our daughters, but at some point we have to let a boy break their heart.
Yeah.
When that romance kind of comes in, when they start dating, whatever, we can advise them, we can give them wisdom, we can set them up. But at some point, their heart is going to be broken, and we have to let that happen. And it's in a way, it's better to do that during dating phase than to protect them and have that happen post marriage. When the
Right.
stakes are higher.
Yeah.
Oh, it's hard, but it's good.
Yeah.
It's good. And I'm saving this. I'll give the audience a little preview. So James actually helped me go through the 17 laws of the intentional father, and before any of it got released and published, and really helped me think through them and added some value and depth to them. And at one point you said, what'd you say about guardrails? Create
Yeah. So I
guardrails
mean,
instead of prison walls, or something like that.
yeah, another analogy, you're driving down the highway, and if you've ever driven in the mountains or somewhere where it's really hilly, there's places where, there's a steep drop off. And in those places, there's always a guardrail. And so as parents, we need to create guardrails. And what the guardrails do is it allows our children the freedom to make decisions within those guardrails so they can move anywhere in between. But when they bump up against those guardrails, it's either for them, it's either I got too close to the edge, I need to move back. Or if they're going way too fast, they're going to go off. But it's a guardrail for their protection. Again, it's that idea of I'm not doing everything for them. I'm not making every decision for them, but I'm going to place this guardrail. They can move anywhere they want. And that's in contrast to a prison wall. In a prison wall, if you're in prison, you have no decisions. You have no choices. You eat when you're told to eat. You eat what you're told to eat. You have free time when you're told. You have free time if you have free time. You watch what you're told to watch. You go where you're told to go. You have no freedom. You can't make decisions. And within humans and children, especially when we create those prison walls versus the guardrails, that can tend to create rebellion within their hearts because
Yeah.
we naturally want to explore and we want freedom. And when we're enclosed and restricted from being able to make those decisions and having that freedom, we rebel against that. We push against it more and more and more, and you can end up creating um, a rebellious child unintentionally. And again, like you said, Aaron, oftentimes as parents, our hearts are in the right place. We care for our kids. We want to protect our kids. But sometimes loving and caring for our kids means allowing them, here's the guardrails, now go.
Yeah. Guardrails, you can go off the road, but you're not going to fall off the cliff. So,
Right,
and
right.
in even in the definition there, we have that word independent. And if we're going to create independence, we do have to give some sort of freedom there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about a few examples of how this might look like in real life, real parenting, and maybe some different phases in life. I have a few, and I'm just kind of throwing you on the spot, so I'll throw one out there. We can go back and forth. But you mentioned, in prison, you don't even get to choose what you eat, or when you eat. Man, I think when kids are young, having them try food that they don't like,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of parents, they won't, I mean, they coddle their kids' diet. They cut the
Mm-hmm.
crust off the sandwich. They don't make them try anything. And this is one of the few areas where I think I did pretty well was made dinner and kids would look at something and, ew, gross. I'm like, you don't know if that's gross or not because you've never tried it. And I would
Mm-hmm.
make my kids try a bite.
Yeah.
And depending what it was, I wouldn't make them eat all of the thing, whatever the thing was. But, guacamole, if you're a little kid, that looks kind of gross, mushy
Yeah.
green stuff. And I make my kids try it. Turns out
Mm-hmm.
one kid loves it, the other kid hates it. That's
Yeah.
okay. At least you tried it and I laughed sometimes. It's okay to, like, if you make a meal and your kids don't want to eat it, let that be their decision, not
Yeah.
forcing you to make two different meals. I know some parents, they'll make a couple meals all at dinner time to appease each and every kid. They have picky eaters because they didn't force their kids to diversify their palate when they're baby
Right.
age. I mean, you can do this once they get into that, uh, off the breast milk or off the bottle into the even baby food. Buy
Mm-hmm.
the gross stuff, make your kids try the broccoli and Brussels sprouts and fish.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like fish, but I made my kids try fish
Yeah.
and I tried it with them. I didn't eat a whole fillet, but and turns out one of my kids likes fish, the other one doesn't. So I think that that's one example of when kids are really little. Yeah, it can be hard. It can be a struggle to try new foods and different things, but force your kids to do it because most of the time they're going to go, I actually like that. And I don't know the biology behind it, but I think there's something about even tasting food when you're little will develop a taste for it later in life. So that I
Yeah.
think that diversity is great. Other examples you might think of, other points in life of how parents can let their kids struggle in that healthy way.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things we've always done with our kids, we've gone out to eat a lot. And of course, when you go out to eat with five kids, when you walk into a restaurant with five kids, especially when they were younger, you'd walk in and you almost you could feel the looks of everybody around that are like, oh boy, here comes the family. Here comes the
Mm-hmm.
noise. Here comes the rambunctiousness. Here comes the kids running around. And we would take our kids out to eat, and we always made them sit down. They had to stay in their seat. They weren't allowed to get up and wander around. When our kids were little, they were just coming out with the little kiosk screens at the table that had games and stuff. And so, but we never let them play them. It was always a time to engage with one another. And then as they got old enough to communicate, to speak, and to understand, what they were saying. So, maybe 5, 6 years old, um, we made them order for themselves.
Oh,
Um, they would have to talk to the waiter or waitress. We didn't do it for them. We didn't order for them, and we told them, said, if you want to eat or if you want something to drink, you need to talk to them. They're here to do, and it taught them not just the social ability to interact with another person, but it taught them the respect of, how do I encounter, how do I interact with this person that is serving me. And I've had people, when we talk to other people that have kids, we're like, yeah, we go out to eat a lot, and they're like, oh, we could never go out to eat with our kids. They don't behave. And I'm like, well, you got to start. And you start by teaching them those hard things of, no, you're not going to get up and run around. And that teaches them self-discipline, self-control. You teach them to engage with the person that's serving you. And it helps them learn, okay, I can't be shy. I have to get out of my little shell here and encounter somebody else. And so we would do that with our kids. And I mean, and to this day, our kids, when we go out to eat, they can communicate with the server and have that conversation with them. Um, and when we go to eat, we're interacting with one another. We're not all sitting there on our phones. Now we don't, not every time. There are times that we sit there and one of us is on our phone. Sometimes it's me, and my wife or one of the kids is like, "Dad, put your phone away." It's like, "Oh, sorry." But again, it helps teach that communication. And, in today's generation, especially, the hard thing is I got to put this down.
right. Yeah.
It's easy to pick this up and engage with whatever's going on here, social media, games, whatever it is. And it's hard to have the discipline to go, no, I'm going to put this down and I'm not going to engage with that so that I can engage with whoever's across the table from me. So we've done that with our kids. We've done the thing, with like you just mentioned about eating. One of our kids, I think we paid him a quarter to try broccoli one time. Um, and I mean, so we've done things like that
Uh-huh.
too. But um, yeah, there's just it just at each stage trying to let them figure out. All right, what the stage of life you're in. What is it you need to do to
Yeah.
grow and push through this?
Yeah. You got to take the training wheels off the bike and
Yeah.
just know they're gonna fall. There's no
Hmm.
one who's gone flawless without training wheels, without falling.
Yeah.
There's probably not a
And
person
that's
in history, but it's like, and but that teaches, and
yes.
they'll live.
And that's a great example because as a parent, the hardest thing is to watch your kids fail or to fall, get their knees scraped up. But the greatest thing you can do as a parent is allow them to do that, but then come right in and be that comfort, be that help. Don't just, again, this is where we find that balance of the two extremes of, they've gotten hurt. Now I come in and I help with the healing so they know as they get older in life, when they encounter that hurt, they know that I'm a loving parent and that I can come and they can come to me for that help.
Hmm. I think it's fair to expect them to get back on the bike. You know,
Absolutely.
every kid wants to quit after that first fall,
Hmm.
and hey, you can go in, we can put the bike in the garage, but you have to get back on one more time. You have to
Yep.
try once more, and you'll probably fall again, but you got to give it a try. Because that again, that's building that grit, that courage,
Hmm.
the tenacity, and it's setting an expectation.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay to fail. It's not okay to quit.
Absolutely. And that's so here's another good example, I think. Something we've always done with our kids is they've been in school. We've told them, we said, when you can play any sport you want. We're not going to tell them, oh, you have to play this sport, you have to play that sport. We said, if you want to play baseball, play baseball. If you want to play basketball, play basketball. If you don't, that's fine. But if you decide at the beginning of the season that you're going to start playing basketball and halfway through you decide to quit, that's not an option.
Hmm.
You are going to finish the season. And if you don't want to play next season, that's fine. But once you start the season, you're locked in. You're not going to quit. You're not going to back out on your teammates. because you're tired of it. So we've always made them finish an
So
activity.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Okay, let's get a little philosophical here. The law of the egg, I have down there, the end game is children becoming successful, independent adults. I think for so that's what I wrote down. I think that's a good it's a good way to look at it, knowing what your end game is. And so
Mhm.
I would say to dads out there, if your definition is going to change a little bit, write one for yourself, create one for your family. Okay, what's our end game here? Part of the reason I wrote this down is because there is the classical or stereotypical Disney World parent. They just want to be their kid's friend. They want to have fun. They don't want to discipline. They want to do all the easy, fun stuff, not the hard, necessary stuff. And you can choose to be your child's friend either in childhood or adulthood, but you can't have both. If
Right.
you're the Disney World parent when they're children, they're not going to respect you when they become adults.
Right.
Or they'll manipulate you because you've allowed them essentially that you've given them that permission when they're kids and that manipulation you've empowered them to take control over you, and they're not going to be your friend, they're going to be your master. So it's like that's not good.
Right.
So the idea is, okay, what's your end game, and let's aim for that. I think it's a better end game to be friends when you're adults. I'm friends with my dad to a certain extent. I still look up to him as an authority figure, and I respect him and I seek his advice on many things, but it's a way different relationship than when we were kids. Same with my mom. I have conversations now that often sound like a peer-to-peer conversation, not a mother to son conversation, but that
Mhm.
wouldn't have been possible had they not let me struggle and play their appropriate roles during my adolescence and childhood years. So
Yeah.
the end game is children becoming successful, independent adults. We want them to succeed. We want them to be independent, and we want them to be adults. That used to be the norm, and this bugs me. But that verb, adulting, oh, you got to go adult. It's like, yeah, like grow up. You have to live. You have to exist. You
Yep.
have to go to a job or clean your house, whatever the thing is. Like, come on, don't. I don't know. I get on tangent there,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that I think it's important for parents to have a picture of what a good end game is for their parenting philosophy and application.
Mhm.
Or what other vision goals do you have for end game of your kids as you think of things that you've intentionally done? Maybe you've never even articulated, but I want my kids to turn out a certain way. What do you have for us in regards to that?
Right. Yeah. One of the biggest things Alicia and I have always aimed for with our kids, of course, as Christians, is that our children, whatever vocation they go into, is that they love the Lord and that they're serving Him. And this is one of the things is, and I speaking directly to Christian parents, Christian fathers, is every one of your children is going to have a different personality. They're going to have a different skill set. They're going to do different things, and so it's tempting sometimes. And I'm speaking from the pastoral father perspective that it's tempting sometimes to want your kids to go into ministry. I want my kids to be in full-time ministry, whether that's pastoring, children's pastor, missionary, whatever. I want them to be in ministry, and that's never been the goal for Alicia and I. Our goal has always been for them, whatever they're doing, is to love the Lord personally, to have that personal, intimate relationship with Him, and to serve Him in whatever area they're in. Um, and as they've grown, you see that in different stages. And of course, with our older two being adult, entering into that adult stage of life, our oldest is she's just working now. She's not in college, but she's working. But she helps lead worship here at our church. She's involved with our youth group, and so she is serving in that capacity. Our second daughter has a heart for missions. God's called her to missions, and so she's pursuing that. She's been on two overseas missions trips. One of them was 2 years in Eastern Europe, and so she's pursuing that. Our other three are still in grade school or in high school and junior high, and so they're still pursuing that. What does that look like for them? And so we've always told them, wherever you're at, whatever you do, we've never had this idea of you have to go to college, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. It's always, what is it that God has gifted you to do, and how can you use that to serve Him? If you're a mechanic, serve Him as a mechanic. We've got great friends that they're mechanics, and they serve the Lord through that.
Mm,
It
yeah.
is their business, and they make money from it, but they also serve through that. And we've got friends that are, oh, we've got a mutual friend whose dad's a CPA, very successful, and he serves the Lord through that position. And so that's always been the goal for us and our kids, is that whatever they do vocationally in life is that they love the Lord and they serve the Lord.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And I'll give the perspective for those listening who aren't subscribed to the Judeo-Christian belief. But regardless, I think every parent wants their kids to have good morals. And
Mm.
what this looks like with this particular law of the intentional father, law of the egg, is, and this bleeds over a little bit into the law of consequences, but valuing a moral code above mere family loyalty. And when I say that, it's going to irk some people a little bit, but let me explain. If your child does something wrong, and let's say it's at school, they do something wrong at school, parents these days will often step in and try to intervene and prevent their children from facing the consequences of their immoral or wrong behavior.
Mhm.
And they feel like, well, blood's deeper than water. I'm going to protect my kid at all costs. And it's like, that's not good. If your child does something wrong, let them face a consequence.
Yeah.
Be suspended or get detention or whatever the thing is, and let them face that and teach them, hey, I love you and I want to have your back and walk you through this. But this type of behavior is not okay. There's a moral code here. Keep your integrity, and just know if you break the law or break the rules, there are consequences to be faced. Because when parents go outside of that, their heart is what we've been talking about. They want to
Mm.
protect their little baby.
Yeah.
But in doing so, you might actually be reinforcing immoral behavior or
Yeah.
illegal behavior. And
Yeah.
that is not good. And
Right.
a lot of kids end up, criminal may be a hard word, but they end up living immorally because parents have reinforced that idea of like, okay, if you do something bad, I'm I'm going to value your behavior because it's you instead of valuing the integrity because it's right. And there are ways to walk to stay loyal to your children and family. You can stay loyal to them when they do something immoral without condoning the immoral behavior, and actually condoning the moral behavior, the keeping of integrity. And man, what a beautiful gift to give your kids.
Yeah.
And whether that's I'm speaking somewhat of a secular moral sample, or of course spiritual. I mean, you do that, and it's a little more ingrained in the Christian tradition. Like, that's just how we do it. Being obedient to God and finding, really letting Him define our life's purpose. So no matter what we're doing, you could be a pastor or a consultant or a mechanic or a CPA, and
Mhm.
still use that to glorify God. And
Absolutely.
that's a beautiful, beautiful gift to give your kids.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Christian or not, I think the principle is still true that going back to what you just said, when we think about loving and caring for our kids, we have to understand what really loving them means. And
Yeah.
we use the phrase sometimes tough love. You have tough love. Love is true love. The greatest form of love is doing or acting, willing what is good for another person, even if it costs me, and they can't and they can't pay it back. And so sometimes for your kids, it's going to be letting them experience the consequences of their decisions. And you don't have to be a Christian to do that. But the principle is true because if you protect them from every consequence, the result is the same, whether you are a follower of Jesus or not. The result's going to be the same.
Hmm.
And so it's a principle that goes beyond just a Judeo-Christian perspective. It's just one of those laws of life. To touch on something else that you had mentioned about being friends with your kids, um, you see this so much today. So many parents want to be that Disneyland, Disney World parent and be that best friend. And, they're the cool parents. All the kids like them. They want to because they let them do whatever. And then, like you said, when they get older, they don't respect them. There's not that actual relationship that they were wanting. And so as a parent, the hard thing is realizing the end goal, and this is something else Alicia and I have worked towards, is we want to reach that stage where we can be friends with our kids.
Hmm.
We're starting to enter into that. Um, but we've even started out and we've told our kids from the beginning, if they've come to us and said, "Hey, mom, dad, can we go and do this? Can we go and do that? Everybody else is going and doing this," and we're like, "No, we're not going to let you do that. We're not going to let you be involved in that." We're uh, one of the things we've always done with our kids is, we didn't let them have cell phones until they had a job and could pay for it. Part of that was just practicality. As a pastor of a small church, we didn't have the money to pay for
So you're
7
five.
phone
Yeah.
lines. Yeah, and so part of it was just very practical, but the other part was one of the things I do. I drive a bus for our school, and these second and third graders were getting on my bus with brand new iPhones. I mean,
Hmm.
$1,000
I know.
iPhones,
I know.
and they're playing music and stuff. And there was one day this kid held his phone up in the air and was playing some song, and I mean there was all kinds of vulgarities coming off of it. Of course, driving on the bus, it's noisy, and I asked the kid behind me, I'm like, "Did that just say what I think it said?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And this was like a third grader, and so this is one of the things as a parent you want to protect them. And for us, protecting them meant we didn't give them full reign of the internet and social media and everything. So we had those guardrails in place. And so they didn't have cell phones and they didn't like it. One of our kids, and I don't know, maybe this is too much to share, but one of my kids would go to school with a calculator in their pocket to make it look like they had a
Oh,
phone
yeah.
because they were the only ones that didn't have it.
Yeah.
And another one of my kids, one of the older ones, has since talked to me and is like, I didn't like it at the time, but thank you, thank
That's
you
it,
for
dude. Yeah.
thank you for not letting us have that because, they're seeing the result, the reason we said no, and so you know we weren't their friend when they were in school and we didn't let them have a cell phone. We weren't their friend. But now we can be their friend as they've gotten older and we can have those conversations and we can be friends, we can hang out, we can do the fun things or whatever that friends do. And so as parents we got to understand their stages. The ultimate stage, yes, is to be that friend, but you can't let that stage come too early, too soon. Otherwise you're peeling the shell off the egg and you're going to end up doing
Yeah.
damage to the chicken.
Yeah, that's such a good example. And man, I can't wait for those thank yous to come, but they're not going to come unless you let them struggle and break out of that shell on their own. So I'll throw this out there. The first time my son, the only time my son has ever shot a deer, James took us hunting with his family, and it was during youth season, and my son got a doe, and we were so excited. And then it's time to get picked up, and what do we got to do before we throw the deer in the truck? You got to field dress it.
Hmm.
And Paige did not want to be a part of that process, but I made him stand out there and help and yeah and be a part of it. And that was an instance for me where I don't enjoy that process either. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of gross. I'm not as manly as James. You can tell by the lack of beard. But doing, man, it's like, oh, I know it's going to make you uncomfortable. I kind of want to protect you, but I'm going to make you do it and go through the process and experience it. And he did not like that, but now he'll brag a little bit of like, oh yeah, I've gutted a deer before. Yeah, he kind of talks that way, and it's those little moments where you force your kid to do something hard, it comes
Yeah,
back, pays for itself tenfold. And what a wonderful, what wonderful gift to give our
absolutely.
children.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So we're hunters. We love to hunt. Our family loves to hunt. I've got one child that does not. And that's fine. She's
Hmm.
gone out and she's hunted with us, and she's shot a deer. She's shot a couple of deer. Um, but it's not her thing, and that's okay. And that's, again, as a parent, understanding your different, your
Yeah.
children's different, especially if you've got different, multiple children. Understanding they've all got different personalities, different likes, um, but allowing them to do that hard thing. Probably one of the most recent things we've done for with our kids, or allowed our kids to do. I mentioned our daughter that went. She spent 2 months in Eastern Europe last summer, and this was her first like overseas trip. Period. She'd never been overseas. She's flown before, but never overseas. And um, she left from our local airport and did not meet up with another member of the team until she arrived in Eastern Europe.
Wow.
So she flew all by herself halfway across the world. Um, and I'll tell you, as a dad, oh, I was scared, nervous, anxious, everything. I mean, that whole day, I'm like, oh man, how's she doing? Is she doing okay? And so talking to her after she made it there, okay, made it back, okay, had a great time. But talking to her afterwards, and this was something Alicia and I talked about. We were both, Alicia and I were both scared to death for her. We didn't say a thing to her about it because we didn't want her to be scared. We didn't want her to be nervous. And we talked later after the trip, and she's like, "Oh, I was scared to death that day. She had to go through Chicago. She had to go through customs. She'd never done those things before, and she was nervous. But she told us after, she goes, I was scared to death. I was nervous, but as soon as I got there, I was at peace. And now she's like, man, let's go. I want to do it again. She went on another trip just this summer to Eastern Europe again for a short term. And, she loves it. Well, she had to go through that hardness, that difficulty, that nervousness, that anxiousness of doing something she had never done before. And she had to do it to know that she could. And now she wants to do it more and more and more.
Hmm.
Um, and as a parent, and I had people ask me when they found out she was going, they're like, "Are you scared? Like, how does that make you feel? Your child going halfway around the world?" And again, this goes back to the end game. Our end game for our kids was that whatever their vocation is, they love the Lord, they serve the Lord. She loves the Lord, and this trip she was serving the Lord. And so I told him, I said, I'm not scared at all. she's doing what God is calling her to do. And if God calls her to the other side of the world and she's not right next to me, that's fine. That's perfect. That's exactly what we've trained our kids to do. Um, so
Yeah.
and I don't know how much time we've got left, but one of the things this may make us bad parents, but we go to, like, when we dropped our kids off for kindergarten, their first day of kindergarten, we didn't cry. We're like, all right, get out of the car, go to class, go to school, because that was part of the goal in life was, all
Mhm.
right, you've reached this stage. Now it's time to go to school. We've had two that have graduated high school. We didn't cry when they graduated high school. Why? Because this was a goal. This was it that, and I, it's one thing to cry because you're excited, you're proud of them. It's another thing to cry because, little Johnny's not going to be at home anymore. He's
Uh-huh.
going out on his own. Our goal as parents has always been, you move on. This is that next stage. You're moving into that next stage of life. How are you going to love the Lord? How are you going to serve the Lord?
Yeah.
Um, and so just watching them go through those stages.
Yeah. There's a couple principles at play. First of all, not projecting your feelings on your children. So you and Alicia may be scared for your daughter flying to Eastern Europe by herself for the first time ever. She probably would have been freaking out a whole lot more if she would have
Yeah.
known your fears or anxieties or emotions. And so, yeah, great move. We don't need to project our emotions on our kids. And sometimes it's like you got to look away. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's certain instances in life where it's like, okay, just do it. I can't watch.
Yeah.
And that there's times when, I mean, there have been times when I encourage my kids to do something. I remember the first time my son jumped off a diving board. He was way too young. He's still in a life jacket. He couldn't swim. But man, he ran and jumped and he ended up diving off this diving board. Not because he knew how to dive, but it's like he wanted to fly like a superhero. And it's just one of the like,
Uh,
ah, he's doing it. And if I would have acted all scaredy cat, he would have too. So we don't want to project those emotions on our kids. And yeah, the whole like the parents who try to keep their kids as children, it's cute when a baby acts like a baby,
right.
but it's not cute when a toddler acts like a baby, and it's not cute when a teen acts like a toddler, and it's not cute when an adult acts like a teen. And so those should be moments of celebration. And I get it; it's hard,
Yeah.
that there is kind of a sadness when it's like, oh, the kid will never use a pacifier again. There's a sweet little innocence, a cuteness to that, and it's like, to get that back, we're gonna have another kid. But yeah, there should also be a celebration.
Mhm.
Hmm, I'm all right not buying diapers because they're potty trained, or now I have some time during the day because they're at school. Whatever thing, yeah, we should celebrate that. And
Right.
I'll end with this. My definition's up on the screen. The end game is children becoming successful, independent adults. If you're going to write your own, but feel free to steal this one and use it for your family culture, dads. But also use that definition, adopt it into your family culture. And I play this card a lot with my kids, and sometimes there's those hard conversations when I have to sit down with them and go, oh, you thought my goal is to make your life easy or to serve you. Oh, you thought you're the center of the universe. Let me remind you what the end game here is. It's for you to become a successful, independent adult. And so while it's a little uncomfortable now, here's why I'm doing this, because you're going to have to do this on your own. You're going to have to be independent. I want you to succeed. I want you to grow into an adult. And it's nice to have that family that I call it family culture, but that piece of family culture that you can fall back on. So when the kids reaching this point of conflict, I don't want to do it. Hey, this is hard to break out of the shell. Being able to say, yeah, I know. And because I love you, I'm going to let you struggle through it and build the strength. So when you get out of it, you can stand on your own. And I just want to end with that because sometimes we need that for ourselves to validate our parenting, but sometimes our kids might need that from us too, to understand, oh, dad has a plan here, and it's not just to make me happy, it's to make me into a successful independent adult. That's why he's doing it. And that's where that respect can be built that you probably won't hear about until they're adults. But man, if our kids can come back to us and say, hey, thank you, I didn't like it at the time, but I respect you for it now, man, I'll take that any day over the immediate, hey, this is fun. Yeah, but it's holding them back.
Yep.
And I'll end it there. So we can keep talking, but unless you say some more good stuff that I'll clip in front.
I
But
just, the only other thing that came to mind was, I mean, just the name of the podcast, Be
oh,
Intentional.
yeah,
It,
just
it
being
takes,
intentional.
it takes intentionality. So be intentional, set that goal of whatever it is, whatever a successful independent adult looks like, set that goal and then work towards it.